Now, I remember something, I remember 17 years ago, then Prime Minister John Howard, he went off to visit the troubled Aboriginal town of Wadare that we discussed a few days ago. He promised to fix it. There was a law and order crackdown on the chronic violence there. There was a deal, for benefits, you have to work. There was promises of change in land rights, and it was all going to be sweet. Now, and the whole press contingent followed Howard and said, yeah. What I remember is telling Howard to his face, just after he came back, this is going to fail. I said that you could put gold taps in all the houses there and it would still make no difference. Warring clans in a welfare ghetto, out bush, where there's no jobs, that is always going to be toxic. And it doesn't matter what race of people are there, it doesn't matter, that just doesn't work. And sure enough, as I reported again this week, more extraordinary violence there. A man killed, dozens of houses wrecked, mobs going nuts, about 500 residents fleeing to the bush as refugees. We keep trying the same things and we keep failing. Why is that? Well, today I read one of the most brutally honest articles in what's wrong with our approach here. This article is in The Australian, written by two friends. One, Anthony Dillon's a researcher at the Australian Catholic University. He actually calls himself part Aboriginal, which is interesting. The other is Warren Mundine, director of the Indigenous Forum at the Centre for Independent Studies. Warren, thank you so much for your time. Now listen, Warren, if I listen to the ABC, if I read The Guardian Australia, if I read The Age newspaper, all we really need to do to fix things, to fix this disadvantage, to fix this dysfunction, is to fight racism, acknowledge Aborigines in the Constitution, and set up an Aboriginal-only advisory parliament called The Voice. You and Anthony disagree strongly. Why is that?
We disagree strongly because it only just compounds the issue. We're living in Australia. Yes, Australia has some races here, but that doesn't mean we're a racist country. In fact, this country bends over backwards. The taxpayers of this country bends over backwards to put money to governments and that to fix this problem. The problem we have is we do the same old thing all the time. I just find it bizarre that we do this. We've tried voices to Parliament previously. They failed miserably. I knew that was going to happen. I worked very hard about getting people into Parliament, and now we've got a record number of Aboriginal people across the federal Parliament, but also in the state and territory parliaments as well. At a time that we are getting good people into the Parliament, you've got Jacinta Price and so on, this is where we're going to shake things up. This is where we're going to make a difference. We're not going to do it with a voice to Parliament. That's just a nonsense. It is just segregating us again. And all we're doing is setting up a massive bureaucracy which is going to cost us multi-millions of dollars, which isn't going to do a thing.
Look, there were many good lines in this article by you and Anthony Dillon. Let me quote one of them and get you to comment, where you said that Aboriginal people treating this belief that we have in our political class, our media class, that Aboriginal people are a different species requiring culturally appropriate solutions, has kept the Aboriginal industry thriving and allowed politicians, academics and consultants to build successful careers for themselves while people on the ground languish. What are these fake solutions that this political media class are pushing, and what is needed instead?
Well, we just mentioned one, this idea that this racism is holding people back. Well, you look at, when I was a kid, a young bloke growing up, we had no doctors, we had no lawyers who are Aboriginal, we didn't have any nurses, we had a few nurses, but we didn't have enough school teachers. We've got hundreds of them now. We've got over 500-600 doctors, you got lawyers, we've got all these other people. They didn't need a voice to Parliament to get to the successful positions that they need, that they got to. The simple thing is that we've got to stop people, treating other people, Indigenous people, different. They're just like any other Australians. You've got Italians who are different culture, you've got Greeks who are different cultures and that, but we all treat each other the same. Got to get your kids to school, got to get them an education, You've got to have investment and businesses operating in these communities to get people into jobs. You've got to have law and order and safety in these communities. We've got to stop this, this hands-off approach to law and order in these communities, because all we see is suicide rates from kids and that who have been abused physically and sexually and so on. You're having women who are abused. You have some men who also are being abused and beaten up and that. Stop. We know what fixes these things. What fixes these things is tough law and order, jobs, education, and getting businesses in these communities. You go into some of these communities and you have a town a similar size of that, a non-Indigenous town. The non-Indigenous town will have hairdressers and cafes and butchers and so on and that. You go to these Aboriginal communities, you don't have any of that.
Yeah, but Warren, one of the reasons, and this is what's upset me so much, I mean, you could actually, it's not about Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal really in the end. You could put a group of white people or whatever race you care to mention in the middle of a desert where there are never going to be any jobs. There is no land that you can individually own. There's no tourism, nothing. And you put a great big welfare pipe into it, and you are going to get kids that don't see any future. You're going to get people running wild. You're going to get violence. You're going to get despair. You're going to get alcoholism. You're going to get the whole panoply that we see. And I just think this is the mistake. We have got welfare ghettos out bush, and you can't expect anything good to come out of that. Hard decisions have got to be made. But Warren, I've got to say, Warren Mundine, you've been leading the call on this. They've got to be made. People have got to read your article today as a stepping off point, your article and Anthony Dillon's in the Australian today, because I think it's a terrific starting point for the debate we really do need to have. Thanks for coming on the show.